Warning, the following video contains spoilers for the entirety of Carole Tuesday. Proceed at your own risk. Coming into the spring anime season, Carole Tuesday topped my list for most anticipated anime. I mean, it's an original series directed by Watanabe known for Cowboy Bebop, and animated by Studio Bones known for Fullmetal Alchemist, My Hero Academia, and Mob Psycho. On top of that, it's a music-focused drama with a soundtrack jam-packed with special guests and A-list talent. All of the pieces were in place for it to become one of my all-time favorites, and when I watched those first few episodes, I was convinced it would be. The first meeting between Carole and Tuesday, their first couple songs, the introduction of Gus and Roddy, Carole and Tuesday's viral gorilla performance, all of it was completely magical to me. The plot was set up to be a battle between technology and humans, between algorithms and emotions. Carole and Tuesday are two girls who write all of their own music. Every note, lyric, and melody is handcrafted and related to their own experiences. On the other side, we have Angela, a model-turned-vocalist who teams up with Tao, a producer who uses extremely advanced AIs to write music that perfectly fit the vocalist. So, as someone who's passionate about both music and technology, this plot was one I found immensely compelling, and I couldn't wait for Carole and Tuesday to face off with Angela as rivals. The first third of the show continues to build up Carole, Tuesday, and Angela as characters. We see them meet new people, write new music, try to market that music, rehearse, and put on their first gigs. Things start to heat up when Gus, Carole and Tuesday's manager, signs them up to audition for Mars Brightest, a talent show in the vein of American Idol. We even got an episode almost entirely dedicated to the bizarre and awful auditions just like American Idol does, which was a great reference. I grew up watching that, and this bit in Carole and Tuesday made me feel incredibly nostalgic. Like I was a kid again and watching my favorites battle it out and then calling in to vote. At this point, I was in love with this show. The cast was frequently expanding with new and endearing characters. Most if not every episode was debuting a new song or teasing future songs, and it was constantly reminding me just what I love about music and concerts. During the competition, Tuesday meets another contestant named Sibel, who turns out to be a superfan of hers. Sibel constantly pushes boundaries, getting all up in Tuesday's personal space and asking if she'd make a duo with her instead of Carole. Tuesday has a hard time saying no and asserting herself, so both we as viewers and Carole as a character have to constantly endure this aggravating behavior from Sibel that Tuesday is just too meek to shut down. But it doesn't stop there, and Sibel crosses the line from annoying to creepy, obsessive, and borderline psychotic. She constantly blows up Tuesday's phone with texts begging for attention. She asks Tuesday for a hug, which Tuesday reluctantly gives her, and then bites her neck to, and I quote, mark her as her own. When Tuesday finally works up the courage to tell Sibel that she can't form a duo with her, she responds by placing a trap that burns Tuesday's hand and renders her unable to play her guitar just minutes before she and Carole were set to take the stage in the semifinals. This entire Sibel arc soured not just the Mars Brightest competition, which had been great up until that point, but everything that preceded it too. Sure, it was inevitable that in a drama show we would get some drama, I get it. But this was probably the absolute worst way to go about it. Sibel is an infuriating character with not a single redeeming quality. Tuesday is reduced to a doormat who lets Sibel do whatever she wants, and Carole is just a helpless bystander who can't figure out how to help Tuesday. As a result of all of this, the two start to fall out of sync in their performances and interactions. And just when they make up and Sibel is dealt with, take a guess what happens. They triumphantly take the stage and win the competition. They use this experience to write a powerful new song. Sibel gets her ass handed to her. No, no, and no. What actually happens is that just before the finals, Tuesday gets kidnapped by her mom, brought back to their family mansion, and locked in her room, making Carole have to basically break in to save her. As a result of this, they're late to the finals and get instantly disqualified. I mean, what the hell is that? Who thought that any of that would be a good idea? Yeah, the end result is Carole and Tuesday put on a moving performance that still enables them to make their debut even though they were disqualified. But really? All of this Sibel stuff and the kidnapping and separation arc were totally out of left field and completely unnecessary. And unfortunately, this absolute disconnect between how the show started and where it ends up going just continues to ramp up in the second half of the show. Remember the plotline about Angela being built up to become a rival to Carole and Tuesday? Gone. Remember how the entire plot revolved around human vs. AI music and the power of the human touch? Gone. Watching the second half of Carole and Tuesday felt like I was watching an entirely different show, and a significantly worse one at that. Gone was nearly every major plot point from the first half. Gone was the lighthearted and endearing slice-of-life comedy with the main characters. Gone was almost everything that had made the first half so magical to me. So, what happens in the second half, you might ask? Can it really be that bad? Well, let's see. Tuesday's mom runs for president and takes advice from her campaign manager, Jerry, to push an anti-immigration policy. Oh, speaking of Jerry, he coordinates a bombing of a building and blames it on immigrants to help her rise in the polls. A journalist named Kyle is introduced, who happens to be investigating Tuesday's mom and the bombing with her brother Spencer. Tuesday meets him and gets a crush on him about 3 minutes later, only to end up heartbroken when she finds out he has a girlfriend and wasn't being nice to her because he liked her, but because he's just a nice guy in general. Jerry finds out he's being investigated by Kyle and attempts to have both Spencer and Kyle assassinated, and the two are forced to jump off a bridge to escape from the would-be assassins. Over on the Carole side of things, she meets her real dad for the first time in what was a genuinely touching and great episode, but then his probation ends and he gets sent back to jail. Soon after meeting her dad, she reconnects with her best friend from when she was an orphan, Amer, who is now a rapper named Ezekiel. Ezekiel releases an anti-government song due to their recent mistreatment of immigrants, and then because of the song, he's suddenly arrested by an ICE equivalent. While in jail, he writes, records, and releases a song confessing his feelings for Carole, and then he gets deported. Awesome! Great! Fantastic! I love this direction! So, what about Angela, though? I'm glad you asked. Angela starts getting stalked by an obsessed fan, who floods her Instagram with creepy comments, breaks into her apartment and trashes it, and hacks into numerous security systems so that he can always keep an eye on her. When he sees that Angela has been hanging out with some guy, the stalker hacks a self-driving car and sends it hurtling into him, crushing him against a wall in an assassination attempt. So upset with Angela for reporting his comments, he then sneaks into a festival that she's performing at and attempts to assassinate her right before she goes on stage. Alright, what else am I forgetting? Right, I'm not done with Angela yet. After the stalker fiasco, her producer Tao gets arrested. Stressed out because of the stalker and arrests, Angela's mother Dahlia freaks out and lashes out at Angela. The gist of it is, "You dumb bitch, why don't you listen to anything I say? By the way, you're not even my real daughter and I'm sick of your attitude." And then she gets a heart attack and goes into a coma. Angela, feeling completely alone, and rightfully so, starts popping pills as if they were pimples on a teenager and becomes addicted to them, basically turning into a zombie. However, she's been nominated for Best New Artist at the Grammys and is scheduled to perform. She visits her mom in the hospital, who wakes up from her coma to say, "Sorry, Angela, you're adopted, but I love you anyways," and then dies. Angela goes to the Grammys and performs before collapsing on stage and falling into a coma herself. No, I'm not kidding, but I wish I was. All of that happens within 8 episodes. It's like I'm watching a shitty soap opera or something. If I could make a comparison to illustrate the tonal shift, it's like you watch 13 episodes of Yuru Camp and K-On! And then 8 episodes of Berserk and Evangelion. I mean, honestly, what the actual fuck were the writers thinking? This sudden shift hurts even more because despite all of that, there's still some great stuff in the second half. The vignette-style episodes where Carole and Tuesday meet Flora and Desmond, two immensely popular singers who have withdrawn from the spotlight because of drugs and illness respectively, were pretty powerful. Carole meeting her dad was touching, and the random one-off episode with Erdogan reminded me of the lighthearted nature of the first half of the show. Seeing Carole and Tuesday release their debut single and it rise in the charts as they record their debut album brought a big smile to my face. Watching Carole and Tuesday return to Cydonia Festival, this time as headliners of the new artist stage rather than stand-ins, was so satisfying. And the scene when Carole and Tuesday are nominated for Best New Artist at the Grammys and put on an incredible performance with Crystal was a genuinely fantastic one. In fact, I'd argue that the 3 best songs of the show overall happen in the last 4 episodes, so they really went out on a high note musically. Carole and Tuesday is at its strongest when it's focusing on the characters and the music, and all of those scenes reaffirm that notion. But rather than spending time on that aspect of the show, the writers instead went in a completely different direction, resulting in episodes with erratic pacing, the massive tonal shift I mentioned earlier, and numerous plot lines that felt shoehorned in, to put it kindly. It almost felt like they wanted to make a political statement more so than they wanted to tell a cohesive story, and simply used whatever elements they could think of to make that happen. Because of this, the plot falls apart and characters become one-dimensional. Angela, who had been built up to be a rival to Carole and Tuesday in the first half, is reduced to nothing more than a damsel in distress for the second half. And Carole and Tuesday themselves almost feel like side characters, which is disappointing considering that this is their show. So many new characters are introduced in the second half that none of them are able to receive adequate development, so when emotional scenes happen, they just don't feel like they have any impact. This was something I found especially disappointing because I saw a ton of potential and possibility with those characters that were introduced. The show's focus on political drama in the second half led it in an unfavorable and disappointing direction, but even so, the finale is still a spectacle and one of my favorites of the year so far. At the beginning of every episode, we got a brief clip teasing the miraculous 7 minutes, and I felt like when we were finally shown what that miracle was, it lived up to its name. In a defiant stand, Carole and Tuesday bring together almost every notable artist from the entire show to perform a 7-minute long song about freedom and change. Seeing every artist get solos in the verses and then unite for an absolutely soaring chorus was more than I could have asked for, and I can't even begin to count the number of times that I've listened to it at this point. While the impact of the message behind the song is dulled due to the poor execution of the political themes preceding it, it did do a good job of showing just how far Carole and Tuesday had come from the beginning of the anime, and of emphasizing the power of music. The idea in general is reminiscent of We Are the World from 1985, which brought together a supergroup of artists for a charity single to benefit Africa, and again in 2010 for Haiti. Even though the idea isn't totally original, it's executed really well, and it had me both smiling and tearing up throughout it. I also can't help but mention the absolute savagery behind the studio ending the show with a "to be continued" screen, only to immediately follow it up with a "in your mind." Talk about a top 10 anime betrayals, damn. Carole and Tuesday is a show that I felt had unparalleled potential going into the first few episodes. I was blown away by the art, and I felt that the soundtrack wasn't just the best of the season, but should easily be the best of the year and could very well be regarded as one of the best of all time. The cast is filled with entertaining and likable characters even despite their lack of development, and each had memorable character designs and strong voice acting. The plot's initial direction with the battle between emotions and algorithms was building up to be something pretty special, and Carole and Tuesday as a show was on track to be one of the best of the year. Unfortunately, those high hopes and initial impressions were dashed by the messy directing and writing in the second half of the series, with the character development unraveling and the plot becoming messy and disjointed, perhaps becoming a victim of its own lofty goals and ambitions. When Carole and Tuesday finds its groove, it's a genuinely amazing show, but when it doesn't, man, does it fall apart. If I could make an analogy, watching Carole and Tuesday is like going to a concert to see your favorite artist. The opening acts are bands you don't know, but each one continues to impress you and raises your excitement for the headliner more and more. The lights go out, everyone screams in excitement, the first song starts, the lights flash, the curtain falls, and then the band members stumble out, so drunk they can barely stand. The drummer goes to sit down in their seat and topples off his platform. The bass player lays down and falls asleep. The guitar player tries stage diving, but the crowd doesn't catch him and he face plants into the concrete. The lead singer grabs a mic and starts singing, but every word is slurred and it's the wrong song. But suddenly, just when all hope is lost, the band magically sobers up, snaps out of it, and plays their most popular song perfectly to end the show. While it may not end up being your favorite night, there is no doubt that it'll be a memorable one that still manages to finish on a great note. But enough about me. What did you guys think about Carole and Tuesday? Let me know in the comments below by voting in the poll in the corner of the screen or via my Twitter at JDefenseAnime. If you liked this video and want more like it, feel free to subscribe or follow me on Twitter for random anime and manga takes, memes, and info on upcoming videos. And as always, thanks for watching my video, and until next time.